I was warned that I should talk some nonsense for a while until you get used to my accent, and then start telling jokes. But I start from something that you're more familiar with, I guess.
And compare.
Hey, are you a robot?
What? No, I am a real person. Maybe we have a bad connection. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's crazy. You just sound so much like a robot.
I am a real person. Maybe we have a bad connection. I'm sorry about that.
Will you tell me you're not a robot? Just say I'm not a robot, please.
I am a real person.
I mean, I believe you, but will you just say I'm not a robot? It'll make me feel better to hear you say it.
There is a live person here.
But I know there is. It would just make me feel so much better to hear you say I am not a robot.
What?
If you could say the words I'm not a robot, it would really mean a lot to me.
I am a real person. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I just want to hear you say I am not a robot.
Yes, I'm a real person.
Right, but will you say I'm not a robot?
Health Enrollment Center? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. Are you currently on Medicare?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
But now let me ask you a
Currently on
question.
Medicaid or looking for Medicaid?
We'll go, you ask me a question, then I'll ask you a question. How about that?
Sure.
Okay, are you a robot?
No.
Will you say I'm not a robot?
I think we could go on this one for another 40 minutes, I guess, that I have left. That is actually a sound that was taken from a random experimentator that you can find online, that then embedded in the artwork by an artist that was part of the exhibition that we just closed 3 weeks ago. It was called Nervous Systems, the Quantify Life and the Social Question. This is the catalog. There won't be any question and answer, but if you want the catalog, you can come and ask me about the exhibition after the talk, and you may get it. But you have to ask me a question about the exhibition, obviously. So the wide room was a part of the exhibition that we did with House of the Cultures of the World. That was about larger kind of a view on what does it mean to live in a quantified society? What kind of social questions we should be asking nowadays, where we're living in this saturated with data environment. And one of our first assumption was that if you like it or not, as you are here all, and myself, we are all in very strong ways techno-utopians. So whatever we say, however we think technology may be bad, or data or information in different contexts, by the end of the day, this is how we end up our days. Looking at the screen and looking for how to make ourselves feel better or do something more interesting, or how to get somewhere and talk to people and so forth. We did this exhibition and it was a massive success. There were 1,000 people coming and so forth. I'm just appropriating photographs from one of the computer makers. It's not the crowd that came to the exhibition. Majority of you own this brand here anyway, except for the black one. The black one is from Samsung, who is doing a counter action, promoting their own tools and devices and so forth. Nevertheless, we had about 12,000 people visiting the exhibition in these 8 weeks. So this talk mostly will be focusing on a part of the exhibition. I'm going to show you tons of video. I'm going to squeeze them in this 35 minutes right now. And it's going to be divided into 3 chapters. But before, I'm going to show you like 5 minutes of, you're going to see me on the screen, which is kind of embarrassing, documentation from what the wide room is. And you're going to see Stephanie Hanke, who is a co-curator together with me and Anselm Franke of the entire exhibition. But we also made a tactical tech, this wide room. So let's have a look at the video. And that also been organized within the context of there's no standard so far. 100 Years of Now, which is the kind of a series of exhibitions that talking about quantification, data, big data, and so forth. And now we're going to see us talking about the thing. The wide room tactical tech created within this exhibition, where we not only play the role of curators but also makers, that we have created this intervention that is the active space of the exhibition, is a mirror of all the narratives. Is a twisted, strange mirror with its own internal light that is emanating towards the entire exhibition.
The White Room is a training and technology store with a twist. What you find here is products and technologies, but perhaps of a more unusual kind. When the White Room is open, there are ingenious workers here who, behind the bar, can help you explore the exhibits here and talk to you about data and data traces. And we have a series of workshops running throughout the exhibition, helping people with their data detox.
In the White Room, we explore 4 different narratives. The first one is the narrative of opening the box. What and how we can do to look into the data that we generate and that we use whenever we do anything, when we use technology and our devices, from mobile phones to laptops and tablets. What is this data? How does it flow? Who have access to this data? And what can be done with it? Something to Hide is addressing the problem of why we often think that our data that we generate through our lives has no value, no meaning. So for we often say, I have nothing to hide.
Unfitbit is a provocation, and it makes us think about the value of our data, like why and how are we willing to give away very detailed information about our living habits, but it also makes us think about the privacy of that data and how much we're sharing about very intimate routines and habits we have. The normal is boring table here is looking at this startup culture and this kind of uncompany vibe that is within Silicon Valley, and this culture of disruption from a different perspective. In 2012, Mark Zuckerberg declared that the age of privacy was over and that social norms had changed around privacy. In the White Room, we have a replica of his house and the 4 houses he bought around here for $40 million to increase his privacy. One of the things we're looking at here is what is the value of privacy, and what is the value in terms of our values of that information, but also the value in terms of the cost. And are we entering into a society where those with more money gain more privacy and those with less and who are willing to give away their data for free lose their privacy? Another example we have of quantification and the social question is a technology that's being developed now by a microchip company. It's funded by the Gates Foundation. And it's a chip that you can implant in a woman's body for 16 years to remotely control her fertility. And it's being developed by the Gates Foundation along with this company for its potential use in developing countries. We're interested also in this question of how the leaders of the technology industries and what we now think of as sort of major technology billionaires are actually entering into new spaces. They're working in the areas of philanthropy and of development in a way which was perhaps the role of the government in the past, but also in a way in which technology and data is a central asset. And lastly, the Big Mama table is looking at maybe twisting this narrative we often think of around the idea of Big Brother, of surveillance, something more sinister, but perhaps recasting the state in its collection of technology as a symptom of care and responsibility for people in society. Iris Guard is a technology that allows for scanning of the irises of an individual. In this case, it's been used by UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, to scan the irises of 1.6 million Syrian refugees to date. And what that does is allows an individual to go up to a bank or into a supermarket and pay at a point where their eyes are scanned and their irises are recognized. When you look at the company Iris Guard, what you see is that the advisory board members for Iris Guard are a mixture of a merchant banker, a former head of MI6, and also former national security advisor to the US president. So when we think about data collection and the social question here, it does raise questions about whether there are sometimes double agendas. We're trying to help people and definitely organize a vast amount of people, but there may be other ways in which the data is being used as well. One example there is a project called Sesame Credit, which is now being implemented in China, which is a kind of way of credit rating for people. So it's not just a normal credit rating on the basis of, for example, your assets or how you pay things back financially, but also based on your social media presence, your network of friends, and different kinds of activities. Sesame Credit's being implemented now also in collaboration with, for example, online dating sites in China. So you may look up somebody based on what they look like, what they're interested in, but maybe also based on their credit score. And your credit score can be affected by the social circles that you have. So you may be thinking that we are curators and
kind of make big events and so forth. Actually, Tactical Tech is the organization that's been around for 14 years right now. And it's like, I don't know, 35 of us with the base in Berlin. We're also presence in India and so forth, and all over the place. And we've been working on the kind of what is the value of information, what is the value of data, and why we talk about technology as a political asset. For us, technology is political. And we do it in different ways. So this talk is not about explaining to you what we do. It's more about referring to the content of this exhibition. So I'm going to unpack these themes of the exhibition with some funny, some creepy, and some strange examples, if you like. And kind of then address you as an audience here, people interested in design, but also in probably believing in things like ethics and so forth, to think differently about how you can participate in quantify society and what your contribution could be and how they could be different, if you like. So the first narrative, Something to Hide, is an interesting one because whenever we talk about privacy and so forth, the first answer is, I have nothing to hide. So instead of saying I have something to hide, you hear I have nothing to hide. And so we were about to explore not hiding, because that's a boring subject that already kind of places you into a position that you are trying to, not say something, not show something, or not do something that you may be planning of doing, but rather about what is this data that has so much value and made so many billionaires, for us to be so easy with claiming that it is actually nothing. So why do we say so easily nothing into something? And we are looking at different projects and different things that are floating around the net and other places to look at what is it nowadays when you talk about data that has political value. Is this what we all think it always been, which is what we generate consciously, like we put a word on paper or into search engine and so forth, or we communicate, we generate some information, etc. Is that the data that has any value anymore? Or we rather talking about the infrastructure that is generating data for us, or we rather talking about metadata. So there are a few examples like this one where you can access very easily a network of baby monitors and other monitors and look at other people's interiors. Or shortly in January there was a search engine available that was looking at connected infrastructure, and that connected infrastructure was anything from power stations, somebody's Facebook pages, or somebody using a virtual machine. You could access the entire computer they were running and so forth. It disappeared very quickly. Well, what we're trying to address through this work that we do around something to hide, nothing to hide, and we use examples like Unfitbit and so forth to make it lighter subject and funny subject in a way that there is a potential possibility of obfuscation or hiding. Practically there isn't, because the current kind of idea about monitoring and gathering data is about metadata and about something that we have very little control over. And the illustration of the old way of thinking, I can use a short fragment of the film from Julian Previer.
In 1979, several unrelated thoughts struck Judge Jack Love before he imagined the electronic tagging system for offenders. Libraries were using a system to ensure that books did not leave the premises unless they were checked out, and systems had recently been developed to localize animals electronically by means of tracking collars. The most important thought, however, according to Judge Love, came to him by chance while he was watching a Spider-Man cartoon. In this comic, the supervillain fixes an electronic device on the superhero's arm to track him. Nowadays, 250,000 of these tagging bracelets are in use at any one time in the USA, and they all come from a Spider-Man strip. Paul Siegler, who was charged with fraud, escaped his electronic ankle bracelet and disappeared. Paul Siegler had sued Mark Zuckerberg in 2010, claiming he was entitled to half of Facebook. Marshals forced their way into Siegler's house on Sunday after a pre-trial services officer was unable to contact him. While conducting a security sweep of the home, the task force officers observed a handmade mechanism connected to the ceiling from which Sieglia's GPS bracelet was hanging. The contraption appeared to have been designed with the purpose of keeping the bracelet in motion using a stick connected to a motor that would rotate or swing the bracelet continuously.
So that was a fragment of Patterns of Life. I'm going to show you another fragment of this film that is available on Julian webpage. I was part of the larger exhibition that, again, you can talk to me later. So when you look at the old form of monitoring and gathering data, the reasons were basically true, I think. One was about selection, how you segregate and separate objects from one to another, how you say that this is criminal, this is not criminal, or racial recognition or whatever that was in the 19th and early 20th century important. And it was about understanding. So who is who, how they operate, and what you can do about them. And control, as you've seen in this film. This is a kind of a fragment of our work we do with the data brokers. We interview them anonymously and running a project now to kind of learn how their business is running, what they do, what they think is interesting, what they actually think about the data they gather and so forth. This is an example of geo-conquesting and an entire business of how we can gather more data about people and individuals without them even knowing about us doing so. And what's happening right now, we're moving from this kind of an old school way of gathering data and the reasons that we're doing that, and moving towards something that is much more complex and complicated, because the current need, I would say, is about prediction and attribution. So it's about what kind of characteristics we can attribute to somebody, and then on the basis of that predict their behavior, rather than understanding and separates one from another and so forth. This is an example of an Israeli company based in the US, actually called 3 Million Club, that had this fantastic idea that's been widely written about, to get investors' money to this whole process of delivering aid, where you can follow the money up until the end of the process when they are saving lives. But at the moment of saving lives, which this is not showing actually, they have people on the ground gathering data. And the whole model is that this data then that they gather through delivering aid is being monetized by selling it back to companies and then put back to the business, which is quite interesting business model for that. There are funny aspects of, what is the value of your data and so forth. We were observing Invisible Boyfriend. This is Invisible Boyfriend. Maybe you are on it. There's also Invisible Girlfriend. For $25, you can get 100 people, 100 mechanical Turks pretending to be a real person and actually asking you real questions, sending you flowers or for extra money, obviously, and so forth. We were running that for a month, and finally we left it. This is the warning we got, that we will break the mechanical Turk heart. But the problem was that actually the heart that was breaking was ours, because we thought actually nearly we're falling in love with that invisible boyfriend, if you like. The next narrative I want to talk about is the Big Mama narrative, which is Big Mama obviously is a word play with Big Brother. And I Love You All comes from one of the high officers of German secret services, the Eastern German secret services, who nearly in tears while explaining why they were designing this sophisticated system of surveillance. He basically explained, because I care, because I love you. And that sounds kind of funny, but we are kind of seeking for a history of where that started, what happened that we were using quantification to kind of understand ourselves and then improve our lives, if you like. And what I'm playing you in the background, I'm going to put the music on when the orchestra starts playing in a second. It's an interesting project from 1939. It started is a mass observation project or movement that started in the UK after the abdication of the king and so forth. There was a anthropologist, filmmaker, whose film we're watching, Jennings was his name. And they had an idea that by then they knew very little about the society. And they were very dissatisfied that the mainstream media were not really showing and telling enough about what the nation, what our people are feeling and thinking about what's going on in the political life and so forth. So they created this system of about 500 untrained volunteer observers who they were sending around the country, and you're going to see in the following footage and so forth. They were trying to capture people doing things that are irrelevant, when they were, doing nothing, playing games, playing music, drinking beer, or engaging in other social activities that up until this point had no value for data gatherers. And then we were following that, how you can get from there, from this naive kind of romantic belief that is driven by the same principle, which is if I only knew all of it, then I would be able to save all the problems that these people and us can have and so forth. And then that leads to these systems that we're observing right now, which is now owned by Thomson Reuters Risk Management Solutions. This is just part of their video, corporate video. Here you can also watch this very interesting institution called Aladdin does global finances, and they have a very similar system in place that in this case they're looking at content is in 60 languages, is 240 territories, is much more than UN countries and so forth. When they're looking at very complex data sets from different places, the commercial, public, and so forth. They're driven by the same principle. And if we look at ourselves and look at our own applications, then we use this, for example.
And the results can make you feel worse. You don't know who to trust. But that's not true for everything. There are apps that let you know when it'll rain, or help you outsmart afternoon traffic.
Turn left.
What if you could outsmart cold, flu, and allergies? Introducing Healthy Day, the first and only app that makes staying on top of your health as easy as staying on top of the weather. Using a patent-pending algorithm, Healthy Day gathers data from the same trusted sources that doctors and hospitals use, then cross-references it with local crowdsourced data to determine what's trending nearby. It lets you see if other people in your neighborhood are sick and what they have. And when you're feeling great, it lets you see what's going around and sends real-time alerts to help you know what to watch out for. But that's just the beginning. It also brings you quick 30-second solutions for feeling better, because searching for answers isn't good for your health. Healthy Day, the smartest way to outsmart the sniffles.
Well, that's a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson. And there's a number of these kind of applications that not only we believe, but people who design them believe that they only have one function. They don't realize that actually the data where it's coming from and what it's creating is a very complicated surveillance system or control system or whatever, depending on who owns the data at this point, or maybe point in the future, if you like. The next example I want to show you is something that is very interesting, because it's not all vicious and negative and so forth. So this is a venture to Singapore, and this is again commercial video from a system called RAHS. It's very bad quality, but they produce it this quality. So I'm going to show you that they not allowed us to show it at the exhibition. However, it's online, you can watch it. So I'm not breaking any laws here right now. They didn't want us to show it because it's low quality, and they're working on a better quality one right now. So I apologize for that in their name as well.
The RAS system will continue to be developed to meet our needs. It is a journey of discovery. We will continue to improve it. We will continue to test and experiment with emerging tools which show promise and potential. The future of RAS, our vision for RAS X, will provide an integrated inter-agency platform for the anticipation of emerging strategic issues. Analysts will be able to work seamlessly with all types of data, all types of media, and all sorts of languages. They will be able to deploy a range of tools and models simultaneously to any issue. The analyst will continue to be our key focus. Strategic anticipation will continue to be our main preoccupation.
So it kind of looks like a sci-fi, and I just keep the black screen for a second, because the project was developed since 2001 by Peter Ho, who was one of the people designing kind of a security system for Singapore. And he came to DARPA and also met Admiral Poindexter that you know, who developed then Total Information Awareness System that has not been approved by the government here, but then was dissected into little pieces and put under the control of NSA. And the trick is that Poindexter actually pass on all the information to Singapore, and they use it with very different premise. The premise there is not control And surveillance, the premise is basically harmonious society. They live under very dramatic conditions, that is in the health or disasters, or they're quite small nation. And the way they explain that to the society is that we all have to contribute our data into this system because that's the only way we can protect ourselves. And it's an official system, it's not nothing vicious about it and so forth. But I don't want to really pick on all these kind of narratives of surveillance or data obsession and abuse of data. There's also a lot of old companies such as MasterCard or Lockheed Martin, who is an arm maker, and they also do different systems. You may not know, you may know, but they were actually paid for, contracted to do census in the US, in Canada, and the UK, last all the censuses, and they are the ones that are collecting the data and analyzing it and so forth. And it's a very complex data set, if you like. On the left, you see MasterCard, who got into contract with Nigerian government, and they produce the biometric ID card that is a payment card and it is a voting card at the same time, and obviously they own all the data. So this is a kind of a situation that we're living in, that if we like it or not, we can't really change it. We're living in this society of kind of a motherly control, where institutions, organizations are collecting everything possible because this is the only way they believe they can help us. And we're moving from this kind of old system of control into something new. And I'm going to use as an illustration Julian Preview, another fragment from the same video, Patterns of Life.
It's like looking in a global ocean for an object that may or may not be a fish. It might be anything, and it might be important, but at first, we're not even sure it exists. And whatever it might be, it's constantly moving and interacting with a huge number of other objects. These objects might make up an organized school of fish, or they might not be related at all. But we do know that we need to find the object, identify what it is, and figure out how it relates to all the other objects, whether fish or seafowl. It's like going after the unknown unknowns. Things we didn't know. We used to know what we were looking for, and were therefore looking for things. Now we don't know what we're looking for. And instead of looking for things, we're looking for activities. Activity-based intelligence is the most important analytic methodology the intelligence community must master in order to succeed in the future.
So this entire piece by Julian Preview is based on a very interesting text by Grégoire Chamagneux, who is a French philosopher who writes on very various topics. I'm not going to dive into that right now. But it goes through 7 cases of historical ways of gathering data and why we're doing that, what matters, what doesn't, and so forth, and why we're into that business, and etc. So I went through two narratives. There was Something to Hide, which is about the individual, our desire to improve ourselves. And for that desire, we're creating a kind of a complex system that is not interested or capable of recognizing us back as individuals, if you like. And it's kind of a asymmetric relationship where more we need this system, the more it is getting better, but also more data is being generated. And the narrative of Big Mama is more about, I forgot to tell you that it's going to be quite a dark talk. I'm sorry, I should have told you. But it's gonna get better now, I think. So normal is boring. So Big Mama is obviously is about this dream of a total control of information and stuff. And this is one from one of the startups. So I was quite happy to hear that Ingrid is now working on Silicon Valley, Uncanny Valley, the project that you probably heard here when you were here, just before my talk. We went there as well, and we were looking at what can we find? What can you find about this paradox of how we see these companies, how we still think about Google as a search engine, Facebook as a social network, and others about whatever they claim they are, and who are they in fact, what they're doing, why we kind of feel like they are the coolest possible institutions out there that we should, if only possible, do something nice with them, and what this ability that they have in terms of aggregation of information and aggregation of wealth, they are now the richest companies in the world, have impact on how we see power structures and so forth. This is an example from Silicon Valley when this building behind the red water tower is a moon express that is being built by Google and others to mine the moon. This is the idea they have, that they at some point will need resources that they won't be able, not necessarily find on Earth, but legally it will be much easier to find them somewhere else because there's no legal framework out there in the space, so they can explore whatever they want. And it's interesting how much these companies are pushing different boundaries and kind of exploiting them and so forth. And they have crazy ideas like Peter Thiel now is kind of, as you know, in conflict with Gawker and other billionaires joining this on the side of Gawker and so on. Also invested a lot of money in Calico, which is the live extension business, etc. So you have this bunch of people who have enough money to fantasize about different ideas and projects and products that were impossible before, like flying to other planets or moons or extending life. Or build balloons and go around and connect more and more people, which is on one hand extremely important because it creates the possibility for those who are not connected to, participate, whatever that is there to be participate in, or hack it. If you look at the Free Basics, which is this Facebook project of connecting next billion, or actually they plan to connect next 4 billion people to the internet. They give for free access to Facebook, and the same Wikipedia is doing, and so forth. And people are only kind of limited to explore that part of the digital space, but they are able to hack it. And this is an example from Angola, where they are able to distribute films and other materials through Wikipedia or through Facebook, kind of bypassing what it was made for, and so forth. I would be curious if you know what that is. Huh? Oh, it's GitHub. It's like whenever I have to show to people, it's like this White House. I'm like, yes, it is White House. Actually, it's not. Yes, this is GitHub. This is the they made a copy of the Oval Room in our White House as their reception desk for those who didn't know, which is funny actually. But it also tells you something about that among all these nice and nicest and nicer, those who work with open source or not, etc., there is a certain kind of a trend in joining the forces of power, if you like. This is the example that is just looking at what's happening recently with Eric Schmidt, who not only is running one of these kind of startups that is backing Clinton, but also become part of the advisory board of Pentagon and so forth. But then recently somebody published this, which is very interesting. I'm just showing you 3 infographics because I can see that you are all about data and visualization. So are we sometimes. And this is the Google transparency project that look at basically the revolving door between Google and government in Europe, in the US, but also the kind of a messy circle on the right side. It's showing how often Google lobbyists visited White House since Obama came to power. So basically they were there at least twice a week, if you like, and so forth. And this also shows the rotation, that you can read the numbers better than I can do, how many people move from Google to government or from government to Google in different constellations. And for us, that's interesting observation of what kind of environment and power distribution it creates, where it's very untransparent. So this is the kind of the third narrative. So now I'm just gonna quickly use in my last 10 minutes few examples from mass culture, kind of to illustrate how we may think people, us and everybody else, is seeing this quantified society, if you like. So first is this entire cult or fear of the hacker.
Submit to a bi-monthly drug test voluntarily. That's the only way that I'll recommend your release.
Hospitals. A heavily networked one like this are almost too easy to hack. This is William Highsmith. He's not only the head of the IT department here, he is the IT department. He's also an idiot. Not that I blame him, because the people that hire him are also idiots. The poor guy only gets a budget of about $7,000 a year, and he's supposed to protect their network from people like me. He never stood a chance. He uses useless virus scans, dated servers, and security software that runs on Windows 98. It's one of the reasons why I made this place my primary care facility. facility. I can make my health records look like every other obedient zombie out there.
Okay. You don't have to worry. I'm not gonna do morphine again.
I know he's dead, but I can sign you up to something that helps. It will let you speak to him. And don't worry, you won't even have to do anything. I'll just assign— Shut up! You click the link and you talk to it. It mimics him and reads through all the things they've ever said online. The more it has, the more it's him.
So, how am I sounding?
You sound just like him.
This might sound a bit creepy. There's another level to this available. It's starting already. Don't put the mic on.
I'll just stop it here. You can watch it. It's probably on Netflix or somewhere. It's actually a very good series, Black Mirror. So the first one is obviously the Mr. Robot that is looking at the hacker. And I wanted to show it to you specifically because you are designing interfaces, you are designing systems that you are using that claim to be experts in different things. And I would just call you into action to try to design them better. Because hacking is actually very good. Hacking is about improving and finding what's wrong with systems, etc. Sometimes it's misuse, but we all misuse different things. And the other one that you just show is about unstoppable desires. Unfortunately, our human condition is as such that if we could, we would. So as a designer, you always will push into this situation where you will have to design something because people want that thing to happen, if you like. And then overall, in a broader popular culture, you have this also more romantic view, and this is an example of that.
That sounds to me like just another extreme Mason view of everything.
Not at all. I finally figured it out. It's like when they realized it was going to be too expensive to actually build cyborgs and robots. I mean, the costs of that were impossible. They decided to just let humans turn themselves into robots. That's what's going on right now.
Oh, right now?
Yeah, I mean, why not? There are billions of us just laying around, not really doing anything. We don't cost anything, and I mean, we're even pretty good at self-maintenance and reproducing constantly. And as it turns out, we're already biologically programmed for our little cyborg upgrades.
How?
Seriously, I read this thing the other day about how, like, when you hear that ding on your inbox, you get a dopamine rush in your brain. It's like we're being chemically rewarded for allowing ourselves to be brainwashed. How evil is that? We're fucked.
So this is this kind of romantic idea that you can withdraw, that you can go to the forest or whatever, you know, get the shed and hide from waves and so forth. That's not possible. It's like when you're working on the exhibition, kind of a principle thinking was that there's no go, there's no way out. Even if you would, there's enough stuff around you that will be on the map and so forth. So that creates this kind of a this specifically fragment was for me important to kind of build this eclipse between or parable is probably a better word for that, between are we a robot or are we not a robot? Who is the robot here, if you like, in a funny way. That was a joke, but I assume nobody will get it anyway. So, and then I'm just gonna play you another bit, which is I want to use it for the background to finish my talk, which is the conversation. Probably you've seen the Coppola film from '74, where somebody got totally paranoid about being backed by somebody who may be better than him because he was an expert in listening to people and so forth. And Gene Hackman tear apart his entire apartment looking for a microphone, didn't find anything, still thinking that there is something in his house. He performs this post-paranoid solo on saxophone to the invisible listener and so forth. And I sometimes feel like that. I wish I could play music like this anyway. So just to finish, who are we? Why I'm here? Probably we got our 1 second and 0.2 of mass culture presence. I'm gonna play it to you. It's funny.
Just as you cannot be a little pregnant, so you cannot be a little totalitarian.
Our entire youth is being monitored, everything we do, and we don't know what it might mean, how it might be used against us.
So, what are you guys? Chaos Chess Club? Pirate Party? Tactical Tech?
None of the above.
So, Chaos Chess Club did not exist up until then. somebody made it up after this. I didn't know so many friends, so many our friends actually watch Homeland. We got so many phone calls and emails like, "Hey guys, you've been on television," and we had this 1 second point two. And somebody mentioned our name in a very wrong context as well. So I think I just have to tell you what we do really, because you may have a very bad impression that we are a quite sad organization that talks about dark side of the data, and we also helping some activists on the street non-stop, which is very tiring. So it's one of the examples of the projects that probably Maya talked 2 years ago, which is about how to track your own traces. You can look for it. It's My Shadow is called. But overall, I think what I would like to kind of say in my last minute and 20 seconds is, like talking to you, what would be important to look at is the role that design plays in that entire environment. Because you are, by the end of the day, people who design the only visible part of this entire quantified system, if you like. This is the interface that we all using, and you design also interfaces that others are using to look at the same or different variations of data set. And you're also the people who are visualizing that data. And I just want to kind of call, if you're interested in doing something interesting in terms of working on politics of that design, on politics of technology, then you should talk to us, because this is what we're really, really good at, I think. But probably I should give you another talk about that subject, I guess, at some point. That's all for now. Thank you.